Hello, everyone, from me as well. I'm Lilli Paasikivi, the Artistic Director of the Finnish National Opera, and I welcome you to the Opera Beyond Jam session. Today's session is part of our larger Opera Beyond project, and it's our first online webinar. With us today, we have representatives from various opera houses and theaters from all over the world, and other professionals working with or with a strong interest in these topics. What we all have in common is curiosity for where the new immersive technologies can take our art forms and how those technologies can enrich the artistic experience. This session will be recorded and uploaded for further viewing on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. Okay, next slide, Anna-Stina. To those who are with us for the first time, a few words about Opera Beyond project. It's a multi-year project that includes producing artistic projects of various sizes, developing XR production tools to help our processes, and to maintain a platform for mutual co-learning, and also searching for novel ways of expression for performing arts. We aim to move out of our own music box and want to interact and join forces with unexpected actors in the field of immersive art and tech. We also want to shake the tradition and conventions, and by doing that, we will enrich the existing artistic canon. Opera Beyond project was launched in spring 2019 in a two-day conference of presentations, keynotes, workshops, project pitches, concept competition that you will soon hear more about, and inspirational informal gatherings. The conference was great success and encouraged us to move further and continue exploring these exciting topics. The new technologies are in the center of much interest in the world of performing arts, and we've lately seen some very exciting projects being created. Our goal in Jam Sessions is to create a platform where the experts and enthusiasts together will explore, share, and exchange ideas of the use of new technologies in performing arts, and especially in live performance. To the future Jam Sessions, we will invite some of these exciting minds to share their thoughts with you. You might ask why a classical opera company like Finnish National Opera is investing in this project. We feel strongly that it is our duty to be at the forefront of development of our art forms. While we do cherish, guard, and maintain the traditions and values of our artistic heritage, we also want to ensure that we play an active part on this exciting technological development and make sure that our art forms will continue to be topical and relevant also in the future. So then to today's agenda. After my introduction, I will give the word to Peter Maniura, who will hold a keynote, A Brave New World. He will entertain you about 40 minutes, including Q&A in the end of his keynote. Then the following 40 minutes we will spend with a case study of LAILA, our prize-winning immersive installation, where I will be joined by composer Esa-Pekka Salonen, Eco Collective designer Saara Mäkinen, Opera Beyond project manager Anna-Stina Haapasaari, and FNOB production director Timo Tuovila. Also Q&A in this end. To end the jam session, a kind of coda, we will spend the last 25 minutes in an online speaker's corner. In this open discussion, we'd like to hear from you, the participants, what kind of thoughts today's session has woken. Feel also free to share shortly your own ideas and project experiences. in order to customize our future sessions to the needs of this community, it's vital that we hear you clearly. Jam session will end at 1700 CET and 6 o'clock Finnish time. Then we will move on to the next subject, the LAILA case study, the LAILA, the immersive experience, that a project that in the Finnish National Opera was truly one of the first of its kind. How did it all start? Here now I would like to invite our artistic partner, composer and conductor Esa-Pekka Salonen, to join the discussion. Are you with us, Esa-Pekka?
I am indeed. Hello everyone.
Hi. Do you have a picture as well? Do you have a camera on?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. So you worked with us on various artistic projects, from opera to concerts, but LAILA must be really one of the most unusual projects that we've done. Could you tell a little bit about the idea, how LAILA came about? You suggested it to me, but where did the process start from?
It goes back several years, actually, to the days when we started discussing this idea of me becoming some kind of an artistic partner of the Finnish National Opera. And I then said that I'm really interested in using the advanced available technology and harness it somehow to be used by the art of opera and also the resources of an opera house. And based on that initial conversation, we kept talking and then came up with the idea of Opera Beyond, which we launched in the previous life, when public performances were happening on a daily basis and so on. But anyway, so that was the impulse, and why I was interested in this sort of approach was, of course, based on the experiments and pilots we had been making in London with the Philharmonia, basically doing interactive installations based on certain works of music, such as the Rewrite that was based on the Rite of Spring, and Universe of Sound, which was based on the planets and so on, and also a few virtual reality projects we had made, and I thought that okay, those things really whetted my appetite, and I thought that to do something like that in Finland would make perfect sense, because Finland, of course, is a highly innovative digital country, and somehow to create some kind of synergy between the tech world and the arts world would be interesting. And so based on all those conversations, LAILA got started.
That's true. You entered this project with a very open mind. It was you had a team of Paula Vesala, dramaturge and pop artist. You collaborated with her, and then it was truly a Nordic art expedition when we decided to have an open call for the concept of LAILA. Can you tell us a little bit about that process, that you enter into a project, you have an idea, but you're also willing to be totally affected by a team that you didn't know about at the time? How was that?
Well, obviously, to call an international competition for something like this is only possible if the basic concept of ours to start with was open enough, flexible enough. So we didn't have a fixed point of view. We just basically made a list of things we would like to see happening, and the most basic requirement was that it has to be about opera. But even that was defined in very loose terms, and finally I thought, okay, what defines an opera? It's actually a really complex question, and there's no simple answer. But I thought that the simplest answer would be that an opera is something that uses the resources of an opera house.
And we
So
certainly
that can be discussed, but at least this is a simple enough approach that we could tell the participating teams that, okay, this is what we want to see.
And it was a huge success. 195 applications from 32 countries. Then we invited 8 of them to work with you they pitched, and you had workshops with them, and then they pitched to an international jury. When we were choosing the winning team, Esa-Pekka, what did you think was the most important criteria in choosing the winning team?
This was a very difficult decision to make at the end, because all those teams in the finals were very interesting, and their ideas were totally fascinating. So the final decision was based on several factors. One was openness to work within the parameters of an opera house, an openness to learn how an opera house works and what it would be in practical terms. And also, when we spoke with the teams at length with Paula, who was my partner in the interviewing process, we thought it would be actually fun to collaborate with a young team, people who were not established yet on the in this space. There were some other proposals that were very, very accomplished and technologically totally brilliant and so on. But these were people who were well known and already had a big name among the makers of that sort of content, and we felt that it would be nice to really go from the ground up and start from zero, almost zero, together with the team. And so we ended up with this really talented group of young Finnish designers and coders and dramaturgs and so on, Echo. And what I found particularly attractive was the interactive element that is the most challenging thing in every effort like this, obviously. Yes. But also, you know, the general spirit. They were just delightful, kind of good, energetic, open, and we thought it would be fun and interesting to work with these people.
Great. Thank you, Esa-Pekka. We will very soon discuss more in detail about your composition process, but now I invite Anna-Stina and Saara Henrikka Mäkinen, who represents the Echo Collective, to talk a little bit about the creative concept. Anna-Stina and Saara, please.
Hi, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. And Anna-Stina?
Okay, thank you, Lilli and Esa-Pekka. And so, Saara, you worked with this project for over a year, and your role as one of the designers in the Echo Collective meant working at the center of developing the concept and visuals and the technical implementation from scratch to the very finishing touches. And your winning concept idea had essentially all the key elements that the installation that we saw in premiering in August did also have. So already back then, at the competition, you had in your mind a large dome that people step into, and at the same time they enter into a different universe created with projection mapping and spatial sound system and this interactive elements. And yet the process brought along a lot of new ideas too, and the concept got sort of enriched along the process. How did you start elaborating the concept with Esa-Pekka and Paula, and how was it to work with a traditional art institution like the Finnish National Opera, and maybe also what did each party bring on the table?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. So our collaboration started actually already at the conference. So I remember every team had a chance to talk to Paula and Esa-Pekka, and they gave us very fruitful feedback. So we kept working on our concept during the conference. After we won the competition, we started this very intensive creative collaboration with the larger team. We hold workshops at the opera and also in our houses and every space we could find. We kept meeting frequently with Paula, working on the concept and narrative part. Also met with Lilli and discussed about it and got great feedback. So it's been very iterative and collaborative process. We believe in this very agile and iterative process. And that's why we always also test everything in very early stages. That means that we make prototypes about pretty much everything. It can be the space or visitor flow, using Legos, visuals, technical implementation, anything. And I think this working method seemed to work very well for all parts of the larger team. And we especially, or I especially enjoyed the stage when we were all working very closely inside the actual dome in the opera house, testing and improving everything, and yeah, the visuals, adapting those visuals to the music part and the interactions. That was the most precious moments for me.
Yeah, it was super exciting to see all the parts come together.
Yeah.
If you think about the final work and the very result, how would you describe the work to a person that has never experienced it, like here in this webinar is the case?
Yeah, it depends on the audience, of course. What is their understanding of, like, do they know what means immersive or interactive or these kind of things? But maybe this overall, what I would say to everyone is that LAILA is a world and experience where you forget who you are and where you are. And you will explore and create different scenarios of the future. And you do that together with an AI. Scary, isn't it? So, but after experiencing LAILA, you might want to visit her again.
You talk about LAILA as a kind of a character of her own, which is very interesting. And as we've seen, the work and the installation sort of has a personality of her own. And you said that she's a kind of an opera diva, but not quite a traditional one. So could you describe what kind of a diva is LAILA actually, and what role does this AI actually play in giving her a voice of her own and a personality?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. I haven't met LAILA for a while. I miss her, so it might be that she has changed. But so LAILA is not an opera in a traditional sense, that's for sure. But LAILA can be certainly seen as an opera diva, just like Ida or Salome. And but LAILA is just she is a little bit different. She's more interactive and she's evolving. And LAILA invites the audience to create her world. And this world of hers, it has these different scenarios which keep on changing. And when it comes to the AI part, I think AI makes LAILA unpredictable. And you can also see that AI enables the communication between the visitors and LAILA. So it's kind of a language between those two.
Now let's look at a little behind the scenes clip where you can all get a hint of what it actually is. Bear with me when I try to launch this clip.
I think the very initial conversation I had with Lili Paasikivi, who's the artistic director of the Finnish National Opera and Ballet, was several years ago, and I said I would like to do something within the organization that uses new technology and basically plays with the elements of an opera house, but without quite being an opera, and so on.
Well, LAILA is an immersive artwork. It's an environment, it's a space. It's also kind of an AI entity, if you want to think about it that way. It's the product of our 1 year of hustling. If you should actually rebuild opera, you can't rip it down more than we've done it. So it's missing all of the traditions of opera. It's missing a person on stage. There's no conductor. You don't sit. You're not a member of the audience who has a comfortable bench. You're actually going in to the experience, and then it's evolving with you. So it's hierarchy free in a way.
I guess what is really special about it for us is this highly multidisciplinary collaboration that we have here. So we are a multidisciplinary team. We have designers and technologists among ourselves, but then we also have a composer, a dramaturg, all of the professionals from the opera that help us create this piece.
I'm sure it has been a learning process for all, inside our collective, but also with the collaboration with others, for everyone.
To compose LAILA was a very different process compared to everything else I've ever done before. I like to learn new things, and this has been a real learning curve, because none of it is composing in the traditional sense of the word.
A big part of the sound design and the sound in the dome is a spatial sound, meaning that we have a 38.2 Genelec system in the dome. It's all around you. 3D spatial sounds means that there's no direction. Anything can happen anywhere.
We're working with really interesting technologies, so we get to do a really interesting projection mapping solution inside LAILA. And we're also using AI in a kind of new type of way that helps the people who come to LAILA interact with the artwork.
Every art form needs the traditional side, the legacy. We have to take care of the legacy, but we also have to make sure that there are new things that nobody has done ever before. And we also have to take the risk of some things not actually working out. So every new work is a risk in this sense. But if we don't take the risk, we're going to die, and the art form is going to die. It's going to dry out and lose its relevance. So the risk is well worth taking.
So then a few words about the audience experience. FNO takes pride. Wait a minute, now I lost. FNO takes pride in perfecting the customer experience. Since LAILA was such an unusual production and we had no previous customer path model to lean on, it was really an unusual task for us. To enjoy the experience properly, some advanced advice to the customer was needed. How to use the wearable loudspeaker, how to record the individual messages, what are the safety rules inside the sensitive and quite precious dome structure. We also wanted LAILA to get visibility in social media channels. We wanted to encourage audience to actively spread the news. So the natural question was, can one post from inside the dome? Yes, but with no flash because it would disturb the projections. We needed to find the balance of preparing the customer properly, but not over-guiding them. We trained our ushers to act as LAILA guides. They did a great job and they also really enjoyed their unusual challenge. The audience entered one by one into the dome, and to get all 6 of them on board after they recorded their individual messages, it took a few extra minutes between the shows. Timing was very important because we wanted to minimize the waiting time. This new out-of-the-box production woke positive curiosity among our regular customers and also the new audiences and media. We even got our first ever opera review in a leading Finnish technology journal, Tekniikan Maailma. The experience itself was visually and musically a rich tapestry of colors and moods. The dramaturgy resembled opera. It had 3 acts and it culminated in a touching finale, just like an opera. So now let's invite Esa-Pekka back and talk a little bit about the composition process. Okay. As you said in the video already, it was something that you'd never done before. Could you tell us a little bit? You always wrote or texted me, I need so and so many singers and I need percussions and I would like to have this and that. And then we pulled these rabbits out of the top hat and tried to give you all the ingredients that you needed in your composition. Can you tell us?
Let me express my deep gratitude for your patience to start with, on behalf of the entire team. Well, the main difference in composing for an interactive installation and composing a traditional concert or opera work is that what the composer does usually is to create a timeline. So the piece starts at point A and ends at point B, and the composer basically takes care of the timeline between those 2 points. So Bach works like this, Beethoven works like this, Schoenberg works like this, Xenakis works like this. LAILA doesn't. So you have to accept that as there is an interactive element, which we cannot predict the behavior of the visitors, and yet the idea is that the experience is always individual. The experience is not predetermined, and basically every visitor is also a composer to some degree. So how do you write music that has an identity, has a certain type of cohesion needed for a coherent musical experience, and so on, and yet provide a framework for all this interaction to happen? So that was the tricky part, and of course, to start with, we were thinking of a completely open form, i.e. That you could enter at any point of the piece, and you could leave at any point, and so therefore you could have a completely individualized experience. We actually, after having tried to make it work, we abandoned that idea. It was just too demanding, and somehow the identity of this experience was very difficult to define if we didn't have any kind of timeline control. So we then decided to go with a 3-part form. As you said, it's a sort of a conventional idea that there's an introduction, and then there's almost like a development section where, almost like in the Beethovenian tradition, the material grinds itself to a halt, which is a development technique that Beethoven uses quite often, as a matter of fact. I didn't think about that then, but now it's kind of clear to me who the godfather was. Good old Ludwig. Can you imagine? He would be really surprised, I'm sure. Anyway, and then the finale, where all the sort of different strands are being tied together, and there's a sort of rebirth, which is quite often the formal function of the recapitulation in the sonata form. So in this way, the form of this became a little more traditional than what we expected. However, the experience is not a traditional one.
Okay.
But the form itself is very clearly delineated, 3 parts, almost like a sonata form.
In the visual part, there are 2 layers, the base layer and the lead layer. Did the audio also have a similar layering?
There is a sort of inaudible base layer in the audio, which is a sort of harmonic timeline. So I needed a certain fixed harmony that runs through the entire piece. Why? Because of not having total control over the interactions in terms of where they occur on the timeline. I needed the AI to know exactly where we are, harmonically speaking, and then allow only pitches that fit into that harmonic model at any given moment in the course of the performance. I.e., there's like a, if you watch CNN or any of these news feeds on TV, you have the ticker below the actual image.
Yeah.
So in LAILA, we have this ticker that is actually not visible or audible, but it defines the harmony in very simple terms. It says these pitches are allowed, these pitches are not allowed.
Okay.
And by doing this, I was hoping to make sure that we wouldn't end up with a mess, i.e., whatever happened would happen within certain parameters that define a coherent experience.
Well, certainly it was very rich and exciting, and then also the interaction, the audience recorded messages when you had your when you could recognize your own little personal message. It was quite exciting to search for those. So how would you say, were you in, I mean, Echo Collective produced very early on some visual themas. Were you inspired by the Echo's visuality, or did they react to your musical ideas with their visuals? What was the hen or the egg or the chicken? which came first?
I think it was a fairly simultaneous birth process. The imagery I saw to start with from the Echo colleagues was basically very sort of mesmerizing, slowly changing virtual landscapes. So something that looked like a natural process, although I knew it was a synthetic one. But it was like a metaphor of a natural process, like a, you know, the surface of a lake or a river, or the movement of the foliage in wind, and these kinds of natural metaphors came to mind. And of course, the story, the narrative of LAILA is that of a birth, a near death of an organism, and then rebirth and regeneration and so on. So the whole thing had a lot of sort of natural references. So
it had a very good, important message, didn't it?
Yeah, there was some kind of an ecological message, of course. Yeah, like a holistic message that no one can exist in a vacuum. We need the entire ecosystem to flourish and so on. That in sort of general terms. So when I realized that a lot of the imagery had a sort of a biomorphic quality, i.e., you know, it looked and felt like natural biological processes, I decided to write music that would essentially have that sort of quality as well, like slowly changing textures and things that would grow and create an illusion of natural growth and so on. And you mentioned the singers and the percussion and so on. Early on, I decided to limit the sound palette quite strictly. So I opted out of using the full symphony orchestra and thought I would just use voices, as we are in an opera house, hello, and percussion. Percussionists are invariably around the world the most adventurous of musicians because they have to, otherwise they wouldn't have chosen that path. So,
Okei, jos mä oon 10 minuuttia.
Okay.
You okay there?
For muting. Okay.
Oh.
Continue, Esa-Pekka.
Okay, yeah. And so the Finnish National Opera Orchestra percussion section was incredibly helpful and flexible and fabulous to work with, and so were the singers. So my deep gratitude again.
Yeah.
We recorded each singer separately because I thought it would be nice to have the ability to move every single voice freely in 360 space. Now that didn't quite happen because we realized that we didn't have that sort of computational capacity available. We would have, you know, had to log on to some kind of supercomputer in Pentagon or maybe Moscow.
Okay, next
like
project.
Yes, quite. But anyway, by recording everybody individually, we achieved a great deal of independence for the voices in terms of the not only the spatial treatment, but also layering and processing and modifying the voices themselves. The one problem that I wasn't anticipating was that of intonation. I mean, we made a synthetic mock-up for each singer for their part, so that they could hear the tempered pitch in their headphones when they were singing their lines, so that they would have a reference. And if they sang exactly in tune with the synthetic sounds, then that would automatically mean that they were in tune. Now, this didn't actually work in a simple way, because when we then bounced all these separate voices together, the first impression was that of a complete chaos, because of the nature of intonation in chorus and orchestras. Of course, the same thing, that you react to your neighbors when you sing, and your intonation is not an absolute one, but it's in relation to your colleagues and neighbors and the ones nearest to you, but also the overall sound of the chorus. And in this case, of course, we didn't have any, so we had to do quite a bit of repitching and so on.
Well, the end result was definitely in tune and very, very impressive. Esa-Pekka, it would be great to hear a little bit about your future projects in the end, if you can still hang around for the Q&A session.
Certainly.
Do you have time? Yeah, let's quickly run through the last, the few other things, and we continue with you shortly. Next, I would like to invite here Timo Tuovila, who is our production director, who could tell a few words very shortly about the technology. Are you there, Timo?
I am here, yes. Do you hear?
In the beginning, when the dome was erected at the Almi Hall stage, our black box theater, you commented that there was more iron and steel than a space rocket. Can you elaborate on that and tell us a little bit about how we ended up having such a massive dome on our stage?
Thank you. I mean, at least it looked like an Apollo 11 when landing in moon, but luckily it was more reliable than Apollo 13. Well, actually, to be very short, if you are interested about the technology used in LAILA, please contact me, and I will get you in touch with those professionals who knows it better. But in overall, because we are opera house, sound was in very big role in this project. And the experience of the production we have had, LAILA was the most challenging production ever, which means the biggest technical risks ever. It was very time consuming, and because of COVID, we have to postpone our premiere, which actually helped us or helped LAILA. It was a very expensive, even with the sponsorship by Genelec. Lot of challenges, but we love challenges. First priority was to fulfill Esa-Pekka's, Paula's, Tuomas and Eco Collective vision, but almost as high priority was reliability. That was in the first steps when we were taking. And at the end, we have over 300 performances without the technical problems. And I have to say special thanks for our sound department, which I'm very proud of. So that's about in a very nutshell.
Thank you, Timo. And you write here that the future use of the dome and the hardware is something to think about, and definitely it is. We have some fantastic equipment there, and maybe we will find an interesting future project to go with it. I would now like to present a few words about the learnings of this process, because as many of us have brought up, it was not without challenges, and how we can turn these challenges and overcome them and be wiser next time. It's also important to sum up a little bit about the process. As we said, it was a complex creative process because we moved in an uncharted territory. We are experts in making opera and ballet productions, but when making something completely new and unique, combining art and new technology, in the beginning, certainly we were not experts. These technologies regarded very specific know-how, and our personnel had to stretch their capabilities throughout the process. This had an impact on the overall project management, leadership, and control. This organic creating process did not easily resonate in our not so flexible production model. It took some time and effort to find common ground when the in-house workflows versus the workflows of the artistic team had to be synchronized. For example, what about deadlines or gates that we have use in our productions. In a normal production process, the prototypes are important. Making LAILA was a prototype of a completely different magnitude. A creative work of art using the latest technology in a new way requires much more time than an ordinary opera and ballet because it is learning by doing and experimenting throughout the whole process. And here a little word of advice. When planning the production timetable, make sure there is enough time for learning and trying. In a way, this COVID pandemic gave us some valuable extra time when we had to move the premiere ahead with 3 months. So we were quite lucky there. It's also wise to allocate enough time to your own staff to learn about the new project and the technology it uses so that not all innovations are left to the guest experts, even after the production is completed. An experimental creative process also requires more financial resources. Make sure you don't make too tight a budget. Often trying and making mistakes is the only way to go ahead when creating something fully new. Even some software creators were surprised how we wanted to use their products. We challenged them to make new versions and managed to use the software the way its creator never thought possible. Here are some observations. And now Anna-Stina will present the results of this project. Please.
Thank you, Lilli. So to conclude, in a nutshell, what resulted from this LAILA process, we had the first round of LAILA shows in the autumn, and as Timo said, we had over 300, so in total 340 shows in August and in September, which meant that around 2,000 people had the chance to experience the work this time around. Of course, compared to our main stage performances, that's a very small number, taking into account that this amount of audience could almost fit into one main stage show. But the point here is that we're not replacing those main stage performances. We're merely enriching our repertoire with something new and doing them in parallel. And we think that it was indeed a very fruitful experience and something that we want to experiment more with. We saw that, for example, in the very generous and sometimes positively surprised international and national press coverage of LAILA. And we also had the great honor of receiving the Fedora Digital Prize, first ever, this category in the Fedora competition for our work done with LAILA. And I believe that digital prize voting is also open at the moment, so you should all go and vote for very innovative new digital projects in the opera and ballet world. In March, LAILA will travel to Oulu Music Festival, a city in northern Finland. And we're also planning a tour in Asia in 2022. And we're hoping to see this list growing, but that's obviously something that will become clearer only as we see the pandemic situation evolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna-Stina. So this was our LAILA immersive installation presentation. And I now pass the microphone to you, our dear participants. Do you have any questions you would like to ask, whether it regards LAILA? We have then something to Peter later on. Feel free. Any hands coming up?
I'll jump in with a question. So I talked a lot about audiences, and what was the audience reaction? How did people react? What did they feel, those 2,000 people?
Shall I start answering this? I think it was, first of all, it woke a lot of curiosity. Why an opera house does something like this, an unusual project. People were very curious. Positive surprise, excited about something very different, but also a little bit confused. Is this opera? What is this about? I mean, it's such an unusual and different experience to what we normally offer. I think especially our regular customers were a little bit confused, but excited. How did you, Esa-Pekka, what kind of feedback did you get?
Well, first of all, it's not the first time that people see something at the opera and wonder what on earth was that. I think it goes with the art form. And we had a few of those, obviously. But I think the interesting part was that the most enthusiastic people were the ones who were not seasoned opera goers, more like people whose experience comes from the gaming world, like younger folks, generally children, and adults who didn't necessarily have deep roots in the art of opera. And so in a way, a project like this also functions as an entry to the world of opera. And the message basically was that, okay, this is really cool. If an opera house, which sounds like a very moldy thing already by definition, can produce something like this, then it might actually be something for us.
Yes.
So as an audience development tool, I think it can be really useful.
Absolutely. Ulrich has a hand up there. Please put your mic on.
Yes, hello. This is Ulrich from Berlin, Komische Oper. Thank you very much, Lily, Esa-Pekka, Timo, Sara, and Anna-Stina for this interesting presentation. I would like to connect Peter's wonderful presentation with my question. I would be interested to get some more information about the story of LAILA. Was there kind of plot? Because you wrote there it was 15 minutes, the performance was 15 per minute, so it had a beginning and an end. How was the story in between, or was it just being in this environment for 15 minutes without a certain story told by LAILA or by you yourself? I don't know.
There was a very loosely defined narrative. And in principle, it was about life forms being born. So the first part of LAILA, the experience was that when you enter the dome, there are these shoals or groups of AI things, AI creatures that kind of swim or fly within the dome, and then at some point you realize that they actually react to your movements and they start following you. So a certain number of these AI creatures become your creatures, and you learn how to interact with them. and they follow you around the dome and so on. And then the second part is when they become independent. So gradually you realize that they are no longer within your sphere of influence. They become their own independent things, and then there's a sort of degeneration of things, and the music gets more threatening, and the lights get more somber, and the AI things actually start dying. They fall to the ground, they start dying, and then there's this almost like an Aristotelian moment of peripeteia, you know, like so that the whole thing crashes down, and then there's a total blackout, which is a very sort of classic theater moment. And then after the blackout, things start growing back again, and now in very bright, beautiful colors, and the AI creatures are now benign and beautiful. And then the last part is like a garden. You're witnessing the growth of a garden, and the music is also continuous and shall we say beautiful.
And will you reveal here the ending?
Oh, we decided to use children's voices to instruct the people. There are a few moments in the course of the performance when you don't really, and so there's a child telling you, "Don't be afraid, it's going to be okay." Which I found it very effective, and at the very end, because we realized in the test showings that people didn't quite know what happened at the end, and what they were supposed to be doing, and because the end was got a little it wasn't abrupt, it was like a fade out, and so we have the child say, "Okay, that was the end, please exit."
Good.
And that also worked dramaturgically very well, because there was and even that was touching somehow.
We have quite a few questions here now. I think I saw Bob's hand up there. Do you still, Bob, have a question? And then it goes Merja Kajava, Julia Savikoska, and Eero Tiainen. So Bob, did you have a question?
No, thank you. My question was already answered. It's about the ambition to reach new audiences, and if of course that was one of the ambitions, and you know how if you succeeded to attract other people who weren't normally coming to your a dusty opera house, so to speak, but have new people coming into our arts forms. Yeah. But that's already
yes.
So
yes.
Thank you.
We did, thank you. So then we go to Merja Kajava, who had a question here. Could you please elaborate which AI technologies were applied in LAILA? Were you able to use existing technologies and tools, or did you have to create new tools as well? Is this for Saara and Anna-Stina, who would answer this one?
Saara had to unfortunately go. And I would maybe transfer this first to Esa-Pekka to ask you whether there were the methods that you used in the audio to create every time something new, like to combine that bass layer and the lead layer, what were the technologies in there?
Well, AI by definition is just an algorithm that deals with large amounts of data. So it doesn't mean necessarily anything else. That's the basic AI definition. And so I don't think we used any sort of existing AI machine or engine. I think it was just the AI was done by coding, basically defining responses to certain impulses, and I think it's an interesting point that the entire design of LAILA was done on Unity, the game engine, so that everything was built in a virtual 3D space before it was built in reality, which gave us a reason to hope that this could be relatively easily transcribed or ported to a VR, pure VR experience. But the AI was not. I mean, all the technologies and algorithms and coding we used were kind of existing material, I guess. It was just the combining of those elements that were new.
Thank you. Then we go to Julia. Are you with us?
Yeah. Hi. Greetings from St. Petersburg, from the Philharmonic Hall, actually. I wanted to ask, Esa-Pekka, just by some coincidence, you have today the start of your digital program at the San Francisco Symphony, and whether the skills you gained at the Finnish Opera House and with the Philharmonia are transferable to the new projects that you might be doing in future, or will they not be applied to the new things that you will be doing?
Well, I think for everyone involved in the development of LAILA, this has been an incredibly important learning experience, and I think, you know, from having witnessed that process from beginning till the end, I learned so much that it's not comparable to almost any other thing I've done. So I started from minute knowledge, and now I have like a little more than minute knowledge of the field, which is a lot more than I had. So it certainly is something I'm going to try to develop further in the future, and also as we have seen, every organization has had to rethink the role of digital in their output during these chaotic and weird times. And I think and I hope that once everything gets back to normal, however we define it when it happens, what we have learned from the digital projects in the meantime will allow us to keep the digital arm going in dialogue with the live arm of the institution, and both sides would keep informing each other and producing more interesting and exciting results in the future. So my plan is to keep doing these things as much as I can, regardless whether when live performance is resumed.
Absolutely. This is a very good bridge to Caroline Dooley's from Scottish Opera question to Peter. What makes a digital program a success? Is it number of views, and what should be counted as a view, etc., etc.? Please elaborate on that.
A brilliant question. And by the way, Esa-Pekka, I'm super pleased that you're carrying on, because we need standard bearers who are iconic figures, and that's really important at the top of organizations and of a higher standing. I think it's really critical, because that will encourage others. That's actually part of the answer to the question, and it's a fantastic question, because one of the other things we have to do is recalibrate and rethink what success looks like. because there are so many different forms of digital success. It was relatively easy with a standard audience. Even with LAILA, you know how many people had come. But of course, if, for example, you're doing a project which is aimed at schools, one school may watch it, but that may be 20, 30, or 300 people. With immersive technology, you're naturally limited in number, but the experience is extremely intense. And I think there are two key metrics, if you like. A lot of what I was trying to talk about, Watch, is this isn't new technology, this is now technology. A lot of it is free, easy, and cheap to use. We've all got one of these. They can do incredible things, often at 4K resolution. And therefore, it means your capture costs or your creation costs can be comparatively small. And often with those projects, you get great impact. Now, what do I mean about impact? Impact can be visibility. Impact can be connection and communication. Impact can translate into money raising. The example I gave of Couch to Chorus, not a project that was aimed to raise money, but it did. So, and this is super important, I think, for leaders and for decision makers within companies. They have to open themselves up and think and be informed about what success looks like. Because in order to develop the art form and the audience, we need to be much more pluralistic, and we often need to be better informed and more specific about what we're targeting where.
Thank you, Peter. We've got 10 more minutes to go. Sarah Halpin here asks Esa-Pekka about the relationship between sound design and composition. Was it an integrated process, or was the sound design somewhat separate to the core composition? We had a wonderful sound designer, Tuomas Norvio. So Esa-Pekka, a very quick answer before we go to the end coda, a little bit about sound design and composition collaboration.
So in this case, the border between composition and sound design was completely soft. Tuomas, who is a real wizard, I was very impressed by his work. He had a lot of input into my turf, as it were, and the treatment of the recorded material. We often spent hours and hours together testing and trying out various solutions, and even until the very last minute, we kept changing certain aspects until we felt that this was as good as it could be. So I didn't even worry about whose turf it was, because they were so closely integrated all the time.
Thank you. Now I would really like to, we've got under 10 minutes to go, really to hear about all of you participants. We are going to have the next session in April. What in your feeling is the best way to move forward? Do you want a presentation of one particular process and project, or would it be more profitable and useful for all of us to have more time for open discussion, etc., etc.? So raise your hands if you have ideas. Of course, we have our own ideas, but it would be nice to exchange, that somehow we develop the jam sessions format together. Anyone? Georgie, please.
Hello, I'm Georgie. I'm from Garsington Opera here in the UK. I think for me, it would be really useful to, it's fantastic looking at case studies, but it would be really useful to look at a few different case studies, but with a specific kind of commonality. So looking at audience across maybe 3 or looking at a specific element, but with different case studies in mind, just to see the difference.
So several in one session to kind of compare, is that what you're suggesting?
I think so, yeah, and maybe it's not focusing on every element of what those projects did. Maybe it's looking at the way technology was used, or looking at the way the audiences, like the reach. But I just think looking at more than one example could be really useful for gaining new ideas and insights into what works and what doesn't.
That's a very nice idea. We'll note that. And Florian Köffler from Karlsruhe says that I'd like to see other new projects like LAILA, so we can have a look at all the ideas that already came to fruition. Thank you, Florian, also from your input. Do we have any other ideas and suggestions? If no hands are raised, then I would like to conclude by thanking everyone. Thank you, Peter, for a wonderful presentation, Esa-Pekka, Saara, and thank you, my in-house colleagues, Timo and Anna-Stina, and especially all of you who had logged in and participated in this jam session. We will send you more information about the next session when we sort out the bloody COVID mess that we are all up to our necks in. I also want to thank Jane and Aatos Erkos Foundation for the financial support of our OB project. Please sign in for our newsletter on our operabeyond.com website and follow us on our social media channels where we post more information, and also the link to the YouTube recordings where you can watch these presentations again. It was great fun, and we will definitely continue. I give the word to Peter in the end. Peter, your hand was up.
No, I was clapping. That was applause.
Oh.
I was.
Okay, that was clapping. Brilliant. Well, in that case, thank you, everyone, and see you in April. Bye.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Stay well.